Well, good evening. On behalf of the Overby Center for Southern Journalism and Politics, let me welcome you all here this evening. I thank you for your interest and for your attendance. Thanks also to the two campaigns who've agreed to join us for the program. It's the only political debate we've been able to arrange this summer. I should say that we have tried to put together Republican debates. So far, we've been unsuccessful in getting them together. But this evening, we're very glad to have two candidates for the Democratic nomination for governor as our guests. I'll introduce everybody quickly so we can get down to business and try to make this an hour-long program. We have here on my far left Johnny DuPree, mayor of Hattiesburg, and Bill Luckett, a Clarksdale attorney. These two men have both worked very hard on behalf of their home cities to make them better places, and now they're campaigning to take those leadership qualities to the governor's office. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us here this evening. Our format's going to be real simple. There'll be an opening statement by both candidates. The order was determined earlier by a coin flip. Bill Luckett will make the opening statement, and then questions will be posed by a panel of Mississippi journalists. We have Jacob Batt, who is the news editor of the Daily Mississippian, Bobby Harrison, the Capitol correspondent for the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal of Tupelo, and John Scott, the news editor of the Oxford Eagle. Thanks, guys, for serving in this role. We'll have a first round of questions. Each candidate will have, the candidate who's asked the question will have 90 seconds to respond, and then the person who didn't get the question will have 60 seconds either to comment on that response or to answer the question himself, or perhaps pose a question to the other candidate. We're going to make this informal, try to get as much give and take between these candidates as we can. After the first round of questions, we'll move to a second round, but we'll cut it off at some point to allow time for closing statements by the two candidates before we end it at 7 o'clock. I'll act as a referee and try to enforce the timekeeping. Thanks if you guys have cell phones, if you'll make sure that they've been turned off. And also, I'd appreciate if you'd hold down the applause so we can keep this thing moving. So now, if we could have Bill Luckett's opening statement.
Thank you, Curtis, and it's a real pleasure to be here in this beautiful new Overby Center. I went to law school over there in what's now called Fairley Hall. That was 2 law schools ago for some of you newcomers here. I was raised in Clarksdale, lived there since I was 6 weeks old. I worked my way through college and through law school. I commanded a National Guard unit, the Mississippi National Guard, and became a small town lawyer. I've started several small businesses from scratch by investing my own money and worked alongside with construction crews to rebuild abandoned buildings, helping create jobs and revitalize a small town that many had written off. As governor, I will bring my can-do approach to creating jobs across Mississippi. I'll focus on helping local small businesses with loan guarantees. I can balance a budget without raising taxes, but I know that investing more in education is the best way to create jobs and improve the economy. I will cut out wasteful and unnecessary perks and instead will focus on helping working families. You see, Mississippi's best days lie ahead, and I look forward to answering questions and enjoying this debate tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor DuPree.
Thank you very much. To all of you who are out there, thank you for allowing us to come here to Ole Miss. Last time I was here, we brought about 500 young people here. After I was president of Mississippi Municipal League, we brought 500 young people here to talk about leadership and how they could work in the community, talk about working in the community, because that's really what it's all about. I am Johnny DuPree. I am the mayor of Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I've been elected 3 times there, but prior to that, I was elected 3 times on the Board of Supervisors, and prior to that I served on the school board. I'm proud to say that I've been married 38 and a half years. My wife is out in the audience along with my daughter who teaches at the University of South Alabama, speech communication, my other daughter who teaches at the 1st grade in Jackson, Mississippi, and my 4-year-old grandson who does nothing but disrupt things. And so he's out there with us because we do this as a family. It is a family thing. We decided to do this as a family. Every time we decide to run, it's as a family. I was raised in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. I was actually born in Fort Benning, Georgia. My dad was a paratrooper, 82nd Airborne. When we decided to come back to Hattiesburg, he decided not to come back to Hattiesburg. So my mother raised 3 children. She raised 3 children the best she could. I started working when I was 8 years old, selling newspapers. First lady I sold paper for gave me an opportunity was Miss Lily McLaurin. Said, rain, shine, sleet or snow, Lily Papers gotta go. That was her slogan because she was preparing us for what was going to happen in our future. She was preparing us because she let us know that you could expect anything, because anything could happen. But be prepared. Be prepared for what happens, and don't let things put you down so that you won't continue to try to excel and try to exceed. That's what my mama did for us too. She tried to make sure that we would excel and exceed, and that's why she thought education was the best way to do that. And so that's why my children are educated. My wife is educated. I'm educated. We talk about educating children every time we stand up, and we spread that word. So I thank you for allowing us to come. Education is the way out. What better place to have a forum, debate, or whatever you want to call it, than at a university? Thank you very much.
Thank you. First question from John Scott.
Good evening.
Hello.
Pleasure to be here, and thank you for attending. And the first question, I'm sorry, goes to
One.
Okay.
Your choice.
Mr. Luckett. Mississippi remains at the bottom or near the bottom of so many lists, so many health areas like obesity and high blood pressure. We're at the bottom of list on the economy and so many academic lists. We've been there for so many years. It's obviously there's no easy answer to get us off these lists, but in your opinion, what can you do to start moving the state off the bottom?
John, I wrote a paper about being last in the best and first in the worst when I was an American government major at the University of Virginia back in 1968. So I'm well aware, acutely aware of this problem. One of the reasons I'm running for office is that I'm sick and tired of holding those rankings. Now what we do long term, we start with education. The best job program, the best economic growth driver is a great education. But it's got to start earlier than it's starting now. It must start at pre-K or early childhood levels. We must sustain that momentum right on up through the career path that's chosen, whether it's the 2-year associate degree in a trade at a community college or a 4-year IHL type experience. But education is the best long-term answer to the problem. Only 30% of our children are getting any kind of accessible early childhood education benefit in our state now. Short term, I want to work with small businesses. Small businesses are the backbone of the economy in this state. 85% of the jobs emanate from small businesses. Small businesses feel somewhat left out. It's good to see these big box projects coming in. And I'm proud we've got the Nissans and Toyotas and even the Kiors and the Eurocopters and the Elevances. But our small businesses need help, and I want to focus on helping small businesses with facilitating loans from traditional lenders. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor DuPree.
Well, I agree with you. You know, for far too long, Mississippi continues to be at the low end of the totem pole. You know, I'm proud to say that Hattiesburg has done real well in the 10 years that we've been there. We've not raised taxes during a downturn of our economy. We've been able to help create 1,000 jobs last year, another 1,000 jobs this year by recruiting a company called Styon to come to Hattiesburg and asking them to do one thing because they wanted something, and that was to ask them, or require them almost, to hire Mississippi people, to hire Mississippi contractors. If they wanted something from us, we wanted something from them. And so they agreed to do that. But as I agree, though, that education is the main focus of what we need to do. And that's why early childhood development is where we ought to be. And our program says that if the state's not going to do it, then we're going to take private church schools and incentivize them so that those private church schools will then be teaching the curriculum so that when that kid goes to school, he's already been taught the curriculum that they're already going to be teaching until we catch up with them at the state level and the state does what it's supposed to do with early childhood development.
Thank you. Let's see, Bobby Harrison has in his hand.
Good afternoon. Good to see both of you again. As long as you both touched on early childhood education, so I mean, and you both think it's an important element. Could you talk a little bit about how you would pay for it? Because a lot of people say they're for early childhood education, but then they say we don't have the money for it. So how would you address that issue?
Well, everything goes back, Robert. Everything goes back to the budget. I think instead of budgeting for 1 year, and that's has been an ingredient for disaster. You got to budget for 3 years to make sure that when you look at the projection, you're looking at 3-year projection, not 1-year projection. What we want to do, we've gone around this state on listening tours to talk about jobs and education. What we hear is that people want, one thing they want is they want our teachers to be paid. They want to be paid a decent salary. So what we're going to unveil tonight is the first phase of Mississippi Education Restructuring Plan. What is that? That's where we are going to propose to our state legislature that we exempt teachers from state income tax, that they don't have to pay personal income tax, because we should have raised their pay like we should have. 5 years ago, we said we're going to raise their pay. Not only are we far behind, we're double where we were 5 years ago, and we said we're going to do that. We also said we're going to raise 1 cent, and that 1 cent was going to, 10% of that 1 cent we're going to give for supplies for our kids, so that teachers and parents wouldn't have to pay for supplies. They're not doing that. That costs $25 million. We get the money. So we're proposing that $50 goes for every child to a parent. So we're talking about tax cuts. So that parent gets $50 per child, so they can buy the supplies that they need. Now we talk about exempting teachers from state tax. Actually, that costs $62 million. That $62 million actually was a surplus that we had this year. So we can pay for it, and we can continue to pay for it. We start budgeting past 1 year.
Mr. Luckett.
Thank you. I have studied a number of other state models. Early childhood education has been a frontispiece of my campaign since the summer of 2009. I'm familiar with what's been done in Arkansas, in Georgia, and other states. Alabama has the best pilot program in the country. Now, we can't strain an already stretched budget. We've got to look for innovative ways to fund this. I've been working with Mississippi Building Blocks and other nonprofits. That's part of the partnership we need to build. Mississippi Building Blocks, if you don't know, is working with daycare centers, existing daycare centers, to assess the educational attainment levels. We can model after other state models without any tax increase and without even going to our state budget as it exists right now. And I have a good plan on how to make that happen.
Thank you.
And I agree with Mr. Luckett, and that's what we were talking about, is that we're not doing any tax increase. What we're talking about is funding these programs with existing funds, with funds that are already there. You know, if you look at our existing corporations, only 10% of our existing corporations pay income tax, pay state tax. That's horrendous. Individual taxes are paid by, the other taxes, the state taxes are paid by individuals, about 70%. That's income tax and state tax. Something's wrong with that number. Something's wrong with the way we do that. There are people that are actually living in Mississippi, saying they live but actually live in Tennessee or Florida, that don't have personal taxes. And we need to crack down on those people who are doing that. We also need to look at those corporations that are not paying taxes. They came to us and said that they were going to do certain things, and that's why they got the exemptions. Some of them are not doing that. If not doing that, then we need to have a sit down with them every year and make sure that they're doing what they said they were going to do, because we're doing what we said we're going to do. If we do that, there's untold millions of dollars that we can do to fund the things that we need to fund in Mississippi without raising taxes. I'm proud to say in Hattiesburg, in my 10 years, we've not raised taxes, but we have found a way to fund the things that we need to fund, and that's what we need to do in the state of Mississippi.
Mr. Luckett, you want to extend your remarks?
I'd like the mayor to identify those corporations who are here who are not doing what they said they would do.
Well, the top, the 80% of the top corporations, Mr. Luckett, in Mississippi don't pay taxes. Don't pay corporate taxes. 103 of those
I agree
don't pay.
with you there, but which ones are saying they're going to do something and not doing it? Are they just enjoying some corporate-based loopholes?
Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to close the loopholes. And that's why, just like the governor had a face-to-face with Medicaid recipients because he thought that they were being fraudulent, and we're going to do the same thing with corporations. We're going to ask them to come in one by one and make sure that what they agreed to do that they're doing. Everybody. We're not going to assume anything except that they're all doing right until we find out they're doing wrong.
Question from Jacob Batt.
All right, back to education. Only 60% of freshmen or of high school freshmen actually go on to graduate from Mississippi high schools, which is 20% lower than the national average. What do you plan to do to keep students in school?
Who are you directing the question to?
All right, now you're talking about ninth grader type freshmen in high school.
Yes, sir.
And you're saying only 60% finish high school. You know, the dropout rate started long before then. It starts earlier than ninth grade. We must cut down on this dropout rate. You know, the prison bed numbers are predicated right now on third and fourth grade reading levels. They look at those reading levels and they can predict with uncannily accurate numbers how many prison beds we need. We have got to start earlier and sustain the momentum. A lot of kids enter kindergarten and first grade with vocabularies of 500 when they should be entering with 3,000. So the answer is to start earlier, get parental involvement, get mentoring. We all could adopt a student, push them and help them, get them through school. Point out to them, the parents especially, the value of an education. If people value something, they go for it. They want it. And a lot of parents don't know what the value of an education really is. They're caught in a cycle. It repeats. It repeats. We've got to break the cycle. Mentoring, good examples, parents who are caring, administrators who encourage. It's going to take the community. It's going to take all the stakeholders involved in this to make sure that children understand what value an education has. And then we'll increase those numbers. And hopefully we'll change this schoolhouse to jailhouse paradigm that we seem to be suffering under and have been for years.
Thank you. Mayor DuPree.
Well, you know, I think we all say that, we all know that the dropout rate is too high and the graduation rate is too low. You know, the reality is that those who attend the majority universities, like here in University of Southern Mississippi and Mississippi State, 50% of those who enter the first year of college don't graduate. In HBCUs, only 40% that enter graduate. That says there's something wrong before they get there. And a third of those end up going to remedial training. You know, the people that paint my house, do the carpentry in my house, the electrical work in my house, all those people went to school with me. They graduated with me. They actually have their own business. That's job creation. They actually make more money than I do, too. And they hire people. What am I saying? When I went to school, they had a vocational training. You know, the special ed has what they call IEP, Individual Education Account, where they take each child and they develop a program for that child. Well, for when you have the other ones, and I'll continue later on.
Okay, thank you. Question from John Scott.
Mayor DuPree, Governor Barber is challenging the legality of the Federal Affordable Care Act. Is this something you support, and more specifically, what are your views toward the Health Care Reform Act?
Well, first of all, you know, I support my president. I support his trying to provide health care for those who can't provide it for themselves. I think that's a good thing. I support being able to keep children on health care when they're 26 years old to help, because most of the time the parents are paying for it anyway. So I support that. I support closing the loophole or the donut where it reduces the cost of pharmaceuticals for elderly. I support being able to, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2008. Without that, if we were to move or I get another job, she would not be insurable. So I support that. I support her being able to get insurance. I support other people being able to do that. Now, are there some things we probably could tweak and probably so, and hopefully when we become governor, if you all do that for us and vote for us, and then we'll look at that and we'll tweak it if we can, and we'll work with the administration in Washington to see how we can tweak that, because God knows us in Mississippi, we in Mississippi, need all the help we can get when it comes to education, health care, jobs, unemployment that we turn down, those kind of things that we need. And so, yeah, I agree with it, and we'll do everything we can to make sure that it is something that we can that benefit Mississippians.
Thank you. Mr. Luckett?
Yes, we, as much as any state in the nation, needs health care, and we need health care in an affordable way. The Act has some provisions that I don't like. I think it favors big health insurance companies far too much. I hated to see that cave in, but I know how compromises work, and I hope, like Mayor DuPree says, some tweaking, some cleanup, some good tight regulations will come forth and will yield us a national act. You know, it was Frederick Hayek who said that we have to share certain risk in life. And a catastrophic injury or a disease can befall anybody, no matter what your socioeconomic means happen to be. Those are risks we need to share as a people. That's the right thing to do, and we must find a way to do it. You know, we have the 37th in ranking health care in this country, yet we pay far more than any other country for that care. We have got to do some revamping, and I'm all for making Mississippi a healthy state with good, affordable health care.
Thank you. Question from Bobby Harrison.
Mr. Luckett, I guess you can take this one first since Mayor DuPree took the last one.
Okay.
But it's really the same question for both of you. Y'all are both successful in your private and public lives that you currently hold, and y'all both are running for governor as Democrats. And there's only been one Democrat elected governor in the past 5 elections. So why are you doing this, and why do you think you'll be successful where other Democrats have failed?
Well, I'm well aware that Democrats don't have the nod here on statewide offices. Only 1 out of 8 right now. When you look at the representatives and senators, we still only have 1 more in that group. We have the best message, frankly, for the most people. You know, the core principles of the Democratic Party revolve around opportunity, revolve around equality, revolve around treating everybody fairly, and don't revolve around cronyism and favoritism and special interest. And I know Mayor DuPree and I both share that same view. Now, for a Democrat to get elected, we've got to have the right messaging. We've got to teach and talk and urge some of these people to rethink their positions. Because to move forward, we've all got to pull together. We've got to be unified in our approach. And I know from my own personal experience with my life path to date that I can gain and grow consensus among diverse groups. I know how to treat people fairly, and I intend to take that into office. I've got to get there by telling people what they're missing out on by not voting Democratic. You know, it's about green to me a lot of times. We need to grow this economy, and we can do it. And Democrats have a clearer path to do that than Republicans do.
Thank you. Mayor DuPree?
Well, you know, I honestly have faith in Mississippians. I have to have faith in Mississippians. If I didn't have faith in Mississippians, then I wouldn't be the mayor of Hattiesburg right now. Would not be elected 3 terms to the mayor as being the mayor of Hattiesburg right now. So I have faith that people will look at records. Bobby, I have faith that people will look at experience. I have faith that people will look and see who is actually the best candidate, whether that's Democrat or Republican. I actually believe that the Democrats are the best candidates. And I think if people would look at our records, they would see that. You know, I say often that I have a record that is, that you can go and look, you can Google, you can HattiesburgMS.com, you can look at the records that we've done in Hattiesburg, and you can see that even when you look at the Republicans, they don't have that history. They don't have the history of being a CEO of a county, city, schools. I don't think we ever had a governor that's had that kind of credentials, those kinds of credentials. I think it's time to have people who have worked with people on the ground, who know what it means when people do things that we have to contend with, and that's why I think they're going to elect us.
Thank you. Question from Jacob Batt.
All right, this was from Mayor. In your time as mayor, Hattiesburg has seen, or has received several awards on growth and small business growth. As governor, how would you keep Mississippi growing as far as job creation?
But you know, the ingredient is the same. You know, I wish that I could stand here and say that we solved every problem in Hattiesburg. I'd be lying to you if I said that. We actually started pushing the ball down the hill. That's kind of my saying. Is that we push the ball down the hill to solve our problems and not just giving lip service to them. We acknowledge, first of all, that there's a problem. And then we put people around the table to determine how we're going to solve those problems. I think we did that. We just received an award last week from Blue Cross Blue Shield as the healthiest city above 10,000 in the state of Mississippi. Why? Because a few years ago, we determined that we wanted to be smoke-free. We put people around the table who were for and against, and we didn't stop until everybody was a consensus to determine that that was best for us. And then when we determined it, we went ahead, and we're totally smoke-free. People are happy about that. What do? We heard people. The last census, because we've grown in Hattiesburg since the last census, the last census said that a demographic between 24 and 29-year-old has grown 27% in Hattiesburg. They now make up 11% of our population. Why? Because we put them at the table. We put you, under 40, at the table and said, what is it that you want? 20 years from now, this is your world. This is not our world. This is not Mr. Luckett's world. This is your world. It's not mine. We want to make sure that we're doing what you want us to do. That's what we're going to do in the state of Mississippi, put people around the table. I can't say it any better. I have a history of doing that. We have a history of doing that. I say we a lot because I believe that that's how you solve problems. We have to do that. Those who we like and those who we don't like. That's how we solve problems. That's what we've done in Hattiesburg. We've put aside our differences and decided we're going to do what the people elected us to do.
Thank you. Mr. Luckett.
I don't really have a comment. I think the question was directed strictly toward Mayor DuPree in Hattiesburg. Is there a follow-up about Clarksdale? I'll be happy to answer it.
Yeah. Well,
the whole world's coming to Clarksdale, Mississippi right now.
Tell us about Clarksdale in a minute.
We have seen an incredible growth in terms of our business creation there. From a street that 10 years ago had no operating businesses in terms of restaurants and art galleries, we have 7 restaurants and 4 art galleries now open. From a place that after 5 o'clock you could have fired a rifle down both sides of the parking lane on Delta Avenue and not hit a car or a person. Don't try it now. It's hard to get a parking spot and there are lots of people out there. So we've seen a tremendous upsurge. CNN came and did a special on us and calling us the white light in a bright recession. I mean, in a dark reception, a bright light in a dark sea of recession. Clarksdale, Mississippi, aired all the way around the world on CNN. We were able to do things when others couldn't, increasing our sales tax revenues double digits. And it just takes vision and hard work, and we have done it. Gosh, we had 4 groups from London, England in just on a Wednesday night the other night. We're talking Clarksdale now, not Oxford. Talking Clarksdale.
Thank you. Question from John Scott.
Mr. Luckett, let's stay on this topic of job growth, if we could, for a minute here. From getting out of Clarksdale statewide, what would your approach be to economic development?
Well, it's the same formula. It works. It worked in Clarksdale. Somebody with some ability, some vision, some leadership skills, some can-do, some know-how. You know, we had naysayers. Open a blues club in Clarksdale? Who's going to come to that? Well, the answer is pretty clear now. The whole world's coming. You just expand the formula out. There are lots of towns that have been forgotten and neglected in Mississippi. We've got pockets, yes. There's South Haven, there's Oxford, there's Tupelo, there's Meridian, there's Hattiesburg, there's places on the coast. But those are 6 cities in a big state. We take it to the visionary level. We suggest things. Let's become the world's destination for music. We become the blues world destination in Clarksdale. Let's expand this view. That's what it takes, and that's what I can do. I have that kind of vision and leadership ability to take it to that next level. My friends pointed that out to me when they suggested back in the fall of 2008 that I take on this run for governor. Do for the state what you've done for your hometown. And I gave it thought, and I know I can get it done. I have that kind of skill set, wherever it came from. Maybe it was my parents, maybe it's just a good work ethic when I was painting houses, putting my way through college and working for other painters and going out working for myself on nights and weekends. I've never shied away from hard work. I had on a tool belt last night hanging a door at my hunting camp. I know how to do things, and I'll get it done.
Thank you. Mayor DuPree?
Would you repeat that for me so I make sure I get it right?
Just on a state level, what would your policy, your economic development policy be? If you could describe that for us.
Well, it'd be the same as Hattiesburg. You know, I think we have the distinction of putting, again, people around the table. We have our area development partnership, which actually take our Chamber of Commerce and took our economic development people and put them under one roof so that we all could talk the same thing and understand that small business is really the backbone of whatever we get. You know, 90-some% of all the businesses in Mississippi are small businesses, and over 60% of the people who work in small businesses. And what I was about to say when we're talking about schools is when I was in school, they actually had vocational training, and the people who I was talking about that actually work and graduated with me actually have their own business. We got to get back to the entrepreneurial spirit, and we have to develop it at home, and develop it in the state. You know, you look at the Delta. I mean, I think that the Delta is a prime location for job growth and industry growth. It used to be that the Delta would do their growing, and then they package it, and they process it and package it and then sell it back to it. Now they grow it, send it off somewhere, they process it, they package it and send it back to us. We've got to look inward. You know, our budget is $20 billion budget. Half of that budget comes from the federal government. We got to stop that. We got to figure out how we can grow our own income inside the state of Mississippi. We've got to be able to do that. And small business development is the way to do that. And you put people around the table. I want to get, you know, we started 1,000 jobs. We helped to start 1,000 jobs last year, another 1,000 jobs. I would love to be able to get a bunch of big companies into the state of Mississippi. But the reality is small business people stay. They don't leave. They suck it up, and they become part of your community.
Thank you. Question from Bobby Harrison.
Mayor DuPree, going back to health care, you made reference to Medicaid face-to-face a few minutes ago. As Mississippi is one of the, maybe the only state, if not the only state, one of the few states to require face-to-face recertification of Medicaid recipients. Governor Barber says that saves money and holds down and eliminates fraud. Other people would argue that it's an undue burden on people and also actually adds cost by the people they have to hire to do those face-to-face visits. What would be your position on that as governor?
I really have to take a real hard look at it, Bobby, because the reality is it didn't save any money. It actually costs more money, administrative money, to actually do the face-to-face. The other thing is they actually changed the way they actually looked at it. Before, the formula was that when someone went off of Medicaid and they came back on, then it would count it twice. Under the new formula now, they count one time, and so they're not even counted, and that's one reduction. The other reduction is that those people at a nursing home or whatever they don't have to do the face-to-face, so they automatically reduce too. So the numbers are not, you know, you can make numbers do almost anything that you want them to do. We take a real hard look at that and see exactly what we want to do. I want to do it. No, I'm not going to have any unburden, any more burdens on those people than necessary. Because the thing is, I got to tell people is that, you know, I look at things as half full, not half empty. You know, I'm not naive. I know that there's some people that on Medicaid that are probably taking the system. I believe that. But the vast majority of people are people who need it. The vast majority of people are people just like people that are sitting here, you know, just like I was when I grew up. We were on commodities, which is the forerunner of food stamps, so y'all don't know what commodities were. Powdered everything, eggs, milk, cheese. You ever had powdered cheese, you had something. So that was the forerunner. And everybody that I knew then needed it. And most of the people I know now need it. But we would have to take a real hard look at that and not put more burden on them that they necessarily have to endure.
Thank you. Mr. Luckett.
Yes, people more knowledgeable than I about this whole situation of Medicaid have consulted with me, and I continue to consult with them. The net effect of this face-to-face certification and recertification program, and we are the only state in the country that does require that. We have the most onerous method of getting onto Medicaid. We have the biggest need to be putting our children on Medicaid of any state in the country. The multiplier effect economically is tremendous, and we get far more benefit back from Medicaid than we pay out for it. It is a budget situation we've got to look at. But I don't see the evidence of sufficient fraud to justify the face-to-face recertification program. What it has the net effect of doing, it's caused 65 to 70,000 children to otherwise eligible not be on Medicaid. And so medical treatment is deferred until it's emergent, and then they go to an emergency room, and that costs 4 or 5 times what that treatment prophylactically would have cost. So it's a no-brainer to me. We've got to get the certification process in line with other states.
Thank you. Question from Jacob Batt.
All right, this goes back to education a little bit. Year after year, Mississippi universities receive less and less funding from the state, to the point where it's some of the lowest in the nation. As governor, would you plan to continue to decrease the funding, or would you stop it?
Well, that's a real dilemma. I have followed closely my undergraduate alma mater, the University of Virginia, as its funding has been decreased by the legislature of Virginia for years and years, down to the point now it's around 10%, maybe less than that at last count. You know, four-year college and postgraduate degrees are not for everyone, but for those who qualify and have the will, we've got to find a way to make it affordable. Georgia, again, has a good working model there. We need to study other states' success and borrow from it. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. But getting back to not everybody is college material in that sense of the word, I think Mayor DuPree made a good point earlier about vocational schools. When I was that age student, we had metal shop and wood shop, they were called, vocational schools. We need more plumbers and masons and carpenters and bricklayers. That workforce development that comes from the community colleges in this state is an invaluable resource, and I want to continue to build it up, talk it up, and make those out-of-state employers who want to come in here aware of it, because we've got wonderful resources there. And like you said, I've got a lot of real estate I've developed over my life, and we pay those plumbers and carpenters good wages too. They're good jobs out there.
Mayor DuPree?
Well, you know, I guess I just go back to the budget priorities again. I think that, Governor Barber made a good statement when he said that we need to figure out what are the core responsibilities for government and then fund those. The problem that we've had over the last few years is that we figured out what the core responsibilities are, and then we cut the core. And you got problems when you cut the core. I think you determine what the core responsibilities for state government is, what they are. And then you go back to your budget priorities. And instead of budgeting for 1 year, you go back to your priorities and you budget your projections for 3 years, at least a minimum of 3 years. And you keep pressing for 3 years to make sure that your projections are good. And you fund the things that you're supposed to fund, like Mississippi Adequate Education, like a 4-year institution, like junior college. You know what the reality is? We pay $14,000 a year per person for an inmate, opposed to, bless you, $4,000 for a student in public school. The numbers don't match. We got a budget. This administration is going to be about education, not about incarceration. And my history in Hattiesburg says that we won another award because we're the only city in the state of Mississippi that instead of incarcerating people with behavioral problems, we call in a clinician. We've partnered with Pine Belt to call in a clinician so that instead of putting them in jail, we put them on meds or counseling, and they don't put them in jail. We got to find ways to stop incarcerating people and making that cost go up and put the money where it needs to be. 4-year institutions, K-12, early childhood development. You got to go back to your budget priorities and determine what are your priorities.
Thank you. Question from John Scott.
Mayor DuPree, you touched on, I guess this would be prison reform. For so many years, it would seem our state's attitude was to put as many people in jail as possible, but it's got to the point now where I think with the budget problems, we're looking at maybe there are better ways to do that. Is it time to start looking at decriminalization of drug laws, things like that?
Well, I'm not going to talk about decriminalization of drug laws. I think I did. They'd probably throw me out of here if I did that. I'm not going to do that. But what I am going to tell you is that over the last 8 years, we have had an increasing amount of money that has gone to incarcerating people. And I think primarily because we got a middleman now. We have privatized incarceration to the hilt. It's costing us so much money. And I told you what the numbers were to start out with. We've got to look at cutting the middleman out, okay? And then we got to look at preventive measures. You know, we have a measure now that if someone commits just a misdemeanor, we don't put them in jail. We make them work. We make them cut roads and cut grass and do the kind of thing. And some of them we hire. The other ones that have a job, because I think it's some asinine about somebody that needs to pay child support and they're not paying child support, they got a job, so you put them in jail so they can't pay child support. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So what we do, we give them an ankle bracelet. We give them a real nice electronic ankle bracelet. And we let them go anywhere they want to, but we just know where they are. But they make the payments to the child support. We got to find innovative ways to keep people out of jail, to keep them, and jobs and education is the answer. It goes right back to where we started from. Education and jobs. Martin Luther King said something. If you give a man a job, if you give a man the opportunity to chart his own course with a job, he will chart his own course because he has the money to do that. It was good in 1965. It's good. It's the same thing right now. That's what we have to do. Move the middleman out of the way and find a way to change this system that we have of putting people in jail.
Thank you, Mr. Luckett.
You know, I think we've been on the wrong track in treating both some mental health patients and some drug offenders. The psychologists, the doctors will tell you that these are treatable problems, that incarceration is not the answer to this. We've got to reduce this prison population. Along with Louisiana, Mississippi has the highest rate of incarceration of any jurisdiction in the world. I said that right, in the world. And there are better ways than what we're practicing right now. But you know, like Mayor said, this private prison industry, I see it in Yazoo City, I see it in Tutwiler, Mississippi, I see it all over the state. Now, a lot of those prisoners are coming from out of state, and I do beg to correct him on the cost per year per prisoner. It's closer to $25,000 to $28,000 than it is $14,000. It's an enormous cost to us. And we've got to look at addressing the problems first so they don't become more expensive problems later.
Thank you. Question from Bobby Harrison.
Can I kind of change the rules a little bit, because you didn't answer his question. I think you may want to answer it. You may be making some real news. His original question was about decriminalization and well, drugs.
No, well, I'll answer that. No, we're not going there.
Yeah, well, that's
okay. If there is an offender, we must treat that offender, that pled guilty by jury person differently. These people need treatment. I've seen a friend of mine who moved back from Atlanta who had an anger management problem. He needs some mental health treatment, not to be put in the county jail. There are different approaches, and that's where we need to address them, I think.
I didn't think you were going to decriminalization.
No.
Not even on the college campus.
Real quick question for both of y'all. God forbid, if you should lose on August 2nd, will you endorse your Democratic opponent?
Sure. I certainly will. I think any sensible Mississippian needs to endorse Mayor DuPree should he win this. I think Mayor DuPree is the second best candidate in this race.
That's easy.
Same God forbid for you, Mayor DuPree.
Well, you'll find that Mr. Luckett and I agree on one thing, that he's the best candidate after me. No, look, I didn't say that for, thank y'all. But let me tell you what, you have two good choices here. You really have two good choices here. You have a man who has been very successful in his own right. All you have to do is go to Clarksdale and see what he's done. All you have to do is look at his bio and see what he's achieved in his own right. But I think I've been successful in my own right too. I've owned my own business. I worked for a major corporation. I've also been in public service because I believe that's what it's about. Mr. Luckett has been in private business where the bottom line is, how much money can you make? That's the bottom line. I've been in a business where the bottom line is how much service can you provide with the money that you have. And that's what we've done in Hattiesburg. And you can look and see that. Now I have, to answer your question though, the very first time Mr. Luckett and I met, but the second time we met, I told Mr. Luckett if I run and if I win, if he wins, that I support him. And then next time, I think very first time we had a setting like we're here today, I stood in front of everybody like I am now, and I said the same thing to Mr. Luckett. If he were blessed enough to win, that I would support him, because I believe we need a Democrat. I believe that with my whole heart, and I would support him, and my family would support him the way that Democrats support Democrats.
Thank you, Mayor. Question from Jacob Batt.
You talked about decriminalization and crime rates, or crime rates, but what are you going to? Mississippi constantly ranks in the top 10 in murder rates, in as far as per 100,000 citizens, and the top 15 in burglary. Are you planning on doing anything to help stop the crime in Mississippi?
Well, is that for me? Okay. Well, again, all I can do is go back on our history. I think first of all, you gotta hire the right people. I mean, you gotta hire the right people to make sure that they're doing what you require them to do. You can't put somebody with every criminal in Mississippi. It just doesn't work that way. But what we've been able to do in Hattiesburg over my last 2.5 terms, has been able to reduce the murder rate, reduce the robberies, reduce all those major crimes that the FBI report. We do it because we use technology, because we've increased our neighborhood associations, our neighborhood. When I became mayor, we had 20-something neighborhood associations. Now we have almost 40. Because again, we believe that protection is a collaborative, not just police, but police, business people, neighborhood associations, everybody working together to solve the problems that you have. And until we all decide to do that, you can't put it all on the police officer. It takes everybody to solve problems. Most of the crimes that you see solved today are solved by people helping the police department solve the problem in some form or manner. So that's what we plan on doing for the state of Mississippi, is working with police officers, working with other cities to make sure they can do the things they need to do, like supporting the Sheriff's Association for things that they want. And I think we have a history of supporting law enforcement, both county and city.
Thank you. Mr. Luckett.
Well, I agree. I appreciate the Mayor's comments there. And again, we circle back to that education component. Quality jobs, not just minimum wage jobs, some good middle class type and upwardly mobile jobs is what we need. And that's going to take some of the pressure off some of these folks who see the street as their only way to get along. It's a scary proposition if we continue down the path we're on now. Our gap between being 50th and 49th in education has widened during the past 7 years. It hasn't narrowed. The difference in being first in poverty, where we are, and second, has actually widened. Our life expectancy in this state is even down now, and not necessarily due to the murder rate, but due to the health problems we have. Although we have some major changes to make in Mississippi, and decreasing crime is certainly one of them, and we can tackle them all.
Thank you. Question from John Scott.
Could I respond just on what Mr. Luckett said at the end? Because I agree with him on our life expectancy. And it's something that you all should really realize, that, in Mississippi, for men, we don't live as long as other people in the United States. The top 5 counties in the United States, 4 of them are in Mississippi. And it gets worse for women. The top 5 counties in the United States where women live the shortest, all 5 counties are in the Delta. And you know why? It's because of obesity and smoking. What we try to do is tackle that in Hattiesburg. We've tackled it by becoming the healthiest city under over 10,000 with walking trails, complete streets, sidewalks, all the things people want, and a smoking ban or smoking ordinance to keep them doing. We've tackled those things. And that's what you got to do for the state of Mississippi in order to do it. You can't just keep talking about what it is. You got to talk about what you're going to do. That I got a history of doing that.
Mr. Luckett, do you want to add anything?
No, no thanks.
Okay. John?
Mr. Luckett, November there are 3 ballot initiatives that voters we asked to vote on. One would limit eminent domain proceedings, the other would define life as beginning at the moment of fertilization, and the third would require voter ID at the polls. Briefly, could you tell us how you stand on all 3 of those initiatives?
I think the first one you mentioned is called eminent domain, and I've been on both sides of that fence. I've represented the state of Mississippi before in those types of proceedings. I've represented the landowner in those types of proceedings. I know those and understand those issues. And I'm going to vote in favor of that ballot initiative because I don't think it's right for a private citizen to be deprived of his or her property by another private concern, whether it's a big box business supercenter or something else. On the personhood amendment, I support that amendment. On voter ID, I'm a bit wary of that, and I'll tell you why. There's no real strong evidence of widespread voter fraud, but I think we all need to take note. There have been pockets of it in places where it in fact has occurred. And there's a good chance that that initiative is going to pass. Now, if it does, as governor, I'm going to make sure nobody is discriminated against, that the laws are applied fairly and equally to every candidate in the election process, no matter what party or what the race happens to be. But we have got to be careful to not ever discriminate or disenfranchise any voter. That law is not clear enough to have been tested yet empirically. We must see what the effects of it are, and if it in fact results in voters not going to the polls freely and casting their votes, then we're going to do something about it.
Thank you. Mayor DuPree.
Let me give a disclaimer here, first of all. You know, the chief executive officer of the state of Mississippi or the city of Hattiesburg, it is my responsibility to carry out the laws of the state or the city, whatever those laws are. So regardless of how I vote or where I stand, the people who determine whether this is law or not law, we will uphold that. That being said, you know, I've been on, I guess, the one side of eminent domain is that we've never voted to take someone's property by eminent domain if it's for a private use. That's not, I think, that's un-American, and we won't do that. Personhood, you know, I believe that a person becomes a living being at conception. You know, I'm not proud of some things in my life, but I am proud that my children were born and we kept them. Well, they did. But that's a long story, y'all. I read an article once about voter ID that actually said that voter ID was a solution looking for a problem. And let me tell you why I say that. Because there is no data that said that voter fraud is so widespread. It's not. And voter ID is not going to stop voters fraud. You know where you get voters fraud? Vote buying, absentee voting, and then voting assistance. That's where you get voters fraud, at the ballot. Where people buy their vote and they assist people and absentee voting. The legislature had the opportunity last session not to put this on the ballot. They had an opportunity where a few small senators blocked it. They had an opportunity to solve this problem, to have voter ID, and to do something with early voting. Bipartisan. And they decided not to do it. Why? So they could have it on the ballot. Why? So they could get more of you all out to vote. That may be a good thing.
Thank you. We are running out of time. Let's move to the closing statements. Again, Mr. Luckett, you've got the first shot.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Curtis. Well, as you perhaps have gleaned from what I've said tonight, for the past 3 decades, I've invested my own money, picked up my tools, my hammer, my skill saw, and my paint equipment, and fixed up properties all over Clarksdale. People had quit on Clarksdale a long time ago, but I saw an opportunity. I opened an upscale restaurant with my friend Morgan Freeman, and along with him as well, opened up a blues club that now draw visitors from all corners of the earth and in large numbers. In a part of Mississippi that people had given up on, we created more jobs when there had been too few. We created renewal and progress where there had been blight and decay. Where people had abandoned buildings and some had given up on a community, we created opportunity and hope for a better future. Some people call it the Clarksdale miracle, but I call it hard work and clear vision. If we can create jobs and economic development in the Delta, then we can do it all across the state of Mississippi. I really believe our best days are in front of us. I'm excited about our future. Look at us as a people. We have the best artists, the best athletes, the best musicians, just the best folks anywhere on earth. We have abundant natural resources. We should not be last in anything anymore. We've got to pull together, and I can get us together. I can build that consensus necessary to move this state forward, and I look forward to that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Luckett. Mayor DuPree.
Thank you very much. Again, as Mr. Luckett said, we do appreciate you all that you are giving us the opportunity to come and express our views and where we stand on certain issues. It gives us an opportunity to get the word out without having to pay for it, and that's always something that's good for us, and I do appreciate that. You know, we've talked about a lot of things here tonight. What separates Mr. Luckett and myself is experience. If I were going to go to court, I'd certainly pick Mr. Luckett. If I was looking for someone to run an agency, a governmental agency, I'd pick me, because I'm biased. Education is the key, though. And that's why we have unveiled the first phase of Mississippi Education Restructuring Program, to make sure that we treat our teachers like professionals that they are, to give them a $2,000 boost in their pay. Well, we may not be putting money in their pocket, but we're not taking money out of their pocket. And so that's what we want to do, is to do that, and we can pay for it, and we can budget for it, and then we want to make sure that what was told to the teachers a long time ago. I told you my youngest daughter is a first grade teacher, and she buys pencils and papers for those kids. Well, I buy it because you get it out of my wallet, but she buys it. But the state promised that they was going to 1 cent, increase 1 cent, and 10% of that 1 cent was going to go to buy supplies, $25 million. So the money's there. And so what we propose is not only exempting teachers with 3 years of experience from state income tax, but also giving back to parents and teachers $50 per child so they can buy the supplies that they need. And if they opt out, if they don't want it, they can give it to the school. If they want to give it to the school, let them buy it. We've got to do something different. That's why I'm talking about restructuring education, not reformation, but restructuring. You got to do something different. That's what we're talking about. I praise God that you all allowed us to come here. Thank you for your being attentive, and I pray that you make the right decision, and I pray that it's us. God bless you.
Thank you both. You've been very good, and you all have been a great audience. You've been quiet and restrained, and know that people have strong feelings, but a hand for you all too, and our 2 candidates. Thank you. Good evening.